Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create these beautiful fractal patterns quickly and easily. For demonstration purposes, I'm making greetings cards and I'm going to be decorating some resin coasters, but you could actually use this technique in all kinds of different ways. I really hope my tutorial inspires you to have a go and explore the possibilities of this simple yet effective technique for yourself. In this tutorial I'm going to be using 1mm thick plexiglass. It works absolutely perfectly for this job. It's not too thick, not too thin, and I really like it. It's got protective film on both sides, which can be really handy. But before I cut it, for this project I'm going to be taking off the blue layer of protective film. And the reason for that is because I've found that when I put my ruler on and I start cutting, that the ruler slides about quite a lot on the protective film, and it does still slide about on the plexiglass, but it's worse on the protective film, so I take it off. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting out the card fronts, which are going to have the fractal pattern effect on them. Now, the process of doing it requires two pieces exactly the same for each card, so you end up with two cards exactly the same. So whichever shape you want to cut, make sure you duplicate it. If you've used plexiglass before and you know all about cutting it, please just skip forwards to the next part of the video. If you haven't used it before, it might be worth watching this bit because, you know, there's a couple of things you could do to know. And the first thing is, when you hold your ruler, which I'm doing just here, you need to stand up and put all your weight on it, because the thing with it is it will slide about if you're not pressing down really hard. And then when you're using your knife, you need to make sure your blade's really sharp, obviously. And don't try to cut through all in one go. Make several strokes with your knife. If you're halfway through making your cut and your ruler does slip and your knife does slip, don't try to carry on. I would say hold the plexiglass on the edge of your table where the line that you've already cut is, and kind of bend it over the side to snap the plexiglass. And usually if you've made a couple of score lines, it will just snap. You don't need to cut all the way through. You can just score it and snap it. But the last thing you want to do if you make a mistake is to try and rectify it and find the line again and try cutting down the same line because your ruler slipped. You'll end up with two lines and it will be a rough edge. So I've cut out most of my cutting out, and you can see now I've got 4 pairs of card fronts and we're ready for making our fractal patterns. For this job you're going to need to protect your tabletop and you're going to need to protect your hands, so get yourself some gloves and make sure something's on your worktop. It really is such a messy job. I use a puppy pad. They're fantastic because they're so absorbent, and yeah, don't say I didn't warn you. All my pieces of plexiglass have still got one side covered with the protective film, but just to be able to show you more clearly what's happening, I've taken off the other piece in this part of the video, just so you can see the paint a little bit better. But I would recommend leaving the protective film on as long as possible. It keeps it on just a lot nicer. The paints I'm using today are all acrylic paints. Some of them are thick, some of them are thin, just straight from the tube or the bottle, and they all seem to work even when you're mixing the thick and the thin. I haven't tried it with any other medium, but I'm sure it'd be interesting to experiment. But for today's tutorial, I'm just using acrylic paint. I'm using a palette knife to spread the paint around. It really doesn't need to be perfect because once you put the two pieces of plexiglass together, you can give it a squeeze together and slide it around to get a really even distribution of paint. And so at this stage where you're just putting it on with the palette knife, don't worry about getting it perfect. It's a good job really, because I'm rubbish with a palette knife. I'll be using gold quite a lot in these card fronts just because it turns out so beautifully. You get a really lovely finish with it. You could use any metallic colour. You don't need to use metallics at all, but I just think the metallic just works so well mixed with the other colours or alongside the other colours. Once you've finished applying your paint, it's time to put both pieces together, and just make sure that you're using the plexiglass side and not the protective film. And it's like making a sandwich, just put them both together and give them a good squeeze, and squeeze out any air bubbles that you can see getting trapped in the middle. Now it's time to separate the two pieces. Just find an edge where you can just grab hold of it and really slowly separate the two pieces. And it works best if you do it slowly, because then you don't get so many little patchy bits left behind. Look at those beautiful patterns. Isn't it fascinating how that happens? I love it. And there's so many possibilities come to mind when you see the results of the different pieces of artwork you could create using this technique. I really do want to explore this idea further. I think it's fantastic. The great thing about this technique is if you go wrong, it doesn't matter, because you can just put it back together and try again. Give it a good squeeze around just like before and separate it, and you'll have your patterns all over again. And as long as the paint is still wet, that will always work. Right then, so I filmed the last part of the video with the microphone, but I had it all set up wrong with my new camera and you couldn't hear me. So hopefully this time you can hear me, because I had the wire wrong, the wrong wire. Anyway, right, I'm back. And I'm going to quickly show you how to make the cards, and it's so simple. Basically, all you're going to need is your card base to match the size of your card front. Okay, and all you really need to know is what kind of card to use, because you all know how to make a card. You just fold it in half and cut it to size. I actually, when I'm cutting my cards out, I get my big piece of card, I cut the score line, fold it in half, and then cut it to size, and then you get a nice clean edge. So this one is made with Mountboard, which is really thick card, but it's easy enough to cut. I like using this because you get a really good quality effect. Here's one that I've already put together, and it's just really strong and sturdy, and it just feels special. All I'm doing, I've got my card front. Now, I did ask people on the forum, the Facebook group that I go on, which is Resin Art Without Borders, and I love it there. It's like going home. It's fantastic. I asked people on there whether they thought I should have the textured side showing on my cards. Yet again, let me turn the light up and see if I get a bit of reflection. The textured side or the shiny side. And usually I've decided I prefer the textured side, even though it doesn't look so good on the camera. In real life I prefer the textured side. But on this one I'm going to do just the one showing the shiny side. So I'm going to put my glue, PVA glue, with an old paintbrush on the textured side. And make sure you get it all over. Normally I would have it down on my protected surface, but I haven't put any protection down just to show you this one, so I'm doing it in my hand, and then simply stick it on. Now with this one, when you saw me make it, it was bigger, you might remember, and there were parts of it that I didn't like. So what I did, well, it was kind of this part, so what I did was I just chopped it in half. I chopped away the bit I didn't like, kept the bit I did like. I've also used my gold Posca pen, which is here, to just do a gold stripe, just to give it a little bit more interest. And there we have it. It kind of, with this thick board, when you use the PVA glue, you kind of get that vacuum effect when you put, just like we did when we were making the pattern really. I'm sure if I pulled this off now I'd get the same fractals in glue. You get that lovely vacuum effect, so I don't need to press it to hold it down. If I did it on this one, the bendy card, I'd probably add the glue and hold it down for a while just to make sure it's stuck. It just, you don't get that same suction keeping it flat. Also, if you're using this Mountboard, you might want to colour all the edges. I've just used my Posca pen for the edges to make them gold. Actually, on this edge I used some gold leaf. I just wanted to try it out, but you can just use your Posca pen. Okay, this is another one you saw me make, and I didn't like part of it, so I cut out the strip from down the middle that I didn't like. I'm going to put them together like that, and it doesn't matter about the bit I didn't like. I've also done some Posca pen lines again. So what I'm going to do now is have a go and see if I can do the same thing on resin coasters, because I do like making them. And you know what, so many times I've thrown away coasters. I know I shouldn't say that. You're all gonna be cross with me now for saying that. Yeah, I have. I've thrown them away when they've turned out really bad. Now these ones, I did them late last night just so I could have a go at doing it, and these actually didn't turn out great either because it was late and I forgot to get my spirit level out, and so if you look at the sides they're wonky. But for the to be able to show you, just to see if it works. It doesn't matter if they're wonky or not, does it? So, right, I'm going to use gold. Okay, so the same as with the cards, I'm going to add my paint, I'm just using gold for this one, all over the surface of my coaster. I don't want to do it too thick because I'd quite like to be able to see the blue through it. See, it's not perfectly flat, so I don't know how this is going to work. I'm hoping that when I squeeze them both together and move them around, it'll spread it all out anyway. So let's just try it. No more messing around. Let's just do it. Right, ready, here we go. I'm going to give them a real good move around. Press them right down. I think I'll just get a baby wipe. I think I'll just wipe the edges while they're together, it's easier. Okay, let's try this. So, because of the suction, which is good because we know it's working if there's suction, I can't really get them apart like that. So I need to get my scalpel, and all I'm going to do, let's see, is pop it in there, give it a twist, oops, and lever it off. You see, this is still a little bit bendy. There we go. Oh, there we go. So the fractals do work on the resin. I'm not really happy with that particular one. I think I'm going to take it apart and have another go. But it's good. It's a good sign. It's working. Now these are still, I've just discovered, because I only did this last night, these are still a little bit bendy. It might work better when they're fully cured, but let's see. So this time, instead of using my scalpel, let's try sliding it apart a bit so that I've got this ridge here, and then pulling it really slowly. Ooh. Again, quite nice. And you can just keep on practicing and taking it apart and putting it back together as long as the paint stays wet, and until you've got something you like. Now I actually like it like this. I'm going to leave it like that, and when it's dried, what I will do is I'll just do a top coat of resin. I'll use my UltraCast, which is heat protective. Well, heat protective? No, it's got a higher tolerance to temperature than my other resins, which is good for coasters. So I will use some UltraCast on the top when it's dry, and I need to sand down the backs as well to make it even because they're wonky and I like them now. I wish I'd saved all those ones that I've thrown away in the past and I could have done this. So there you go. It works on coasters, and in a moment you will see some better photographs of my cards and the coasters. I'll show you a picture of the coasters when they're finished with their top coat on. Here we have them all finished. What I did was I painted the sides just with some yellow acrylic paint first, and then painted some of the gold paint on top of the yellow because the gold is quite thin, and to cover the dark blue with the gold, it was just taking too many layers. So I used yellow, and then the gold on top. And then when that was completely dry, I used my UltraCast resin over the top and let that set overnight. Once again, thank you for visiting Louise Singleton Creations. I really hope you're inspired, and I hope you're about to dash off and have a go for yourself. But before you do, please remember to click like and subscribe, and don't forget to leave me a comment. Bye for now.